right. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the world's most exciting classroom. My name is Joe Grabowski, and I'll be your host for today. You may have noticed that my surroundings have changed a little since last week. I am back home from my office in Canada. Last week, I was in the Galapagos with the DARWIN200 team, with the Oosterschelde. We did 8 live events from the Galapagos. If you missed them, they are up on, well, 2 spots you can find them. Actually 3 spots. You can go to 2 YouTube channels, either Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants or the DARWIN200 YouTube channel, and you can find the events we did live from the Galapagos last week. Or you can visit worldsmostexcitingclassroom.com and you can find the 8 live events that we did from the Galapagos. We're going to recap some of those events today. I have some highlights to share, but it was a lot of fun. It was a little bit challenging. The Starlink unit that we have for land has a separate battery pack and a modem and a dish. So I looked kind of funny running around the Galapagos with all of that gear, but it worked out very well because we were able to broadcast from some amazing places, like with the giant tortoises in the highlands, from the public docks with some amazing wildlife, out from Bartolome, which is an incredible island off the coast of Santiago we visited. So lots and lots of stuff to check out there. We're also going to have a brand new experiment. We'll look at our answer to the experiment from a couple weeks ago. We'll have a curiosity of the week. We'll mix in a Cahoot quiz. It's going to be pretty darn busy. We've got a great group of classrooms tuning in live. Use that chat sidebar, say hello to us, and definitely send in some questions. We can answer questions throughout today's event. We have 4 classrooms hanging out backstage with us in camera spots. So we are going to steal questions from you when the time comes up. And so, yeah, let's get right into it. We only have a few days left in the Galapagos before the Oosterschelde will start sailing again. This time we're heading towards Rapa Nui. You may know it as Easter Island as well. And I'm very, very much looking forward to arriving there. I think we'll have some really special events from Rapa Nui. We've got some really good science coming on board as well. But before we look too far ahead, let's go back to the Galapagos. So lucky for us, we have expedition leader Stuart McPherson with us. Stu, give me a wave backstage if you're ready for us. Yeah, perfect. All right, so let's bring Stuart in. He is still in the Galapagos, that lucky guy. And this morning, he ran out to the mangroves he had just in front of his hotel and filmed a quick little segment for us. But let's say hi to Stuart first. Hey, Stu.
Hello, Joe. It's absolutely lovely to see you. How are you?
Yeah, so good. I mean, it's still nice and warm here in Canada. The snow's gone, but oh man, the Galapagos was beautiful. It's hard to be back home.
Absolutely, we're really missing you. It was such an amazing few days that we had together out here, and yeah, particularly that trip to Bartolome. It was an extraordinary place. So yeah, we're so glad that you could join us in person out here.
Yeah, of course. Well, we know that upon arrival, we were in San Cristobal. We had 4 incredible Darwin Leader projects. Now I believe we have 7 on the go in Santa Cruz. Do you want to update us on the Darwin Leaders?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. We've got 7 really amazing projects. They actually conclude today. We have Laya from Singapore studying ecosystems. We have Megan Fountain studying mangroves and the conservation of mangroves. And where I'm staying, literally in the middle of Puerto Aora, there's a beautiful mangrove system right in front of the hotel, right in the middle of the city. So I went and made a little recording of that this morning to see sea lions and iguanas, to show you how people here live side by side with wildlife. It's incredible. We'll also have Itamar from Brazil studying sea turtle conservation. And this is a really lovely project. As you may remember, we did an exchange with Brazil. You might remember, we worked closely with Project Tamar with all of the sea turtles that we saw in Brazil. So we had a really great link up with Brazil and brought Itamar out here. And we're trying to keep that connection with sea turtles really active and live. We've also got a really exciting project with Alfredo looking at rays. And on other islands around the archipelago, we've divided the Darwin Leader group here. We've got 3 projects here on Santa Cruz, 2 in San Cristobal this week, and 2 in Isabela. And they're looking at the endemic Solanaceae, the tomato plant family, of which there's many endemic species. It's going to be a really interesting project. And our patron, Sarah Darwin, Charles Darwin's great-great-granddaughter actually did her PhD on these. So we've got a really lovely connection on that project. The two last projects look at seabirds and also endemic beetles. And as you may know, Charles Darwin himself absolutely loved beetles. He was really, really interested in them and an avid beetle collector. And there's many very interesting endemic species here in the Galapagos. So we really look forward to showing you all of those projects. The camera teams and the Darwin Leaders are actually finishing those projects literally today. They have to finish the films by this evening to show them to our community of local conservationists and dignitaries from here in the Galapagos. Each one has to do a little presentation about their work. So we'll be posting them live on the YouTube channel from tomorrow onwards, and we'll have them all ready as well for next week. We can actually show you some of the films also live in the world's most exciting classroom.
All right. That is very exciting, Stu. We love having the Darwin Leaders join us in the world's most exciting classroom. So starting next week, we'll be inviting Darwin Leaders to come back and join us and share some of their projects from around the world. And of course, the Galapagos. We can't wait to see some of those live videos.
Very much
okay.
so.
Well, what do you say, Stu? Let's take a look at the little walk you took this morning, and then we can talk a little bit about what you saw.
Perfect. Sounds good.
All right. Video file is loading now, and we should see it momentarily.
Welcome everyone back to the Galapagos Islands. DARWIN200 is in its last week. It's the last of 3 weeks here in the Galapagos, and we've got 7 amazing Darwin Leader projects that I'm going to tell you about in a moment. But first of all, I just wanted to show you this amazing city. So I'm in the middle of Puerto Aora, the largest city in the Galapagos. And remember, this place is an example for conservation. 97% of the Galapagos Islands is conserved and protected. Only 3% is developed. And I'm in the middle of that biggest town of that 3%, Puerto Aora. But look, there's a beautiful mangrove. Let's have a little walk through it. This is right in the heart of town. I'll show you it here. I mean, it's amazing. All the children, all the people live here right amongst nature. There's nature all around us. There's usually marine iguanas on this boardwalk, but it's a bit early here today. It's only about 7 a.m, so it's a little bit early. But look, the pelicans are all in the trees. They're waiting on these boats. Sometimes fishermen come in and, oh, there's a fisherman down there actually cutting up a fish, I think. And look, all these pelicans are hungrily awaiting. Look, they're trying to snatch his food right now, the little rascals. Here's one up here. This is the brown pelican. So yeah, there's nature all around. There's crabs. There's a Grapsis crab on this, a Sally Lightfoot crab down there. And out at sea, we can see our beautiful ship, Oosterschelde. Tonight, we've got a presentation showing all of the Darwin Leader projects to the local conservation partners. We've got several dignitaries and local politicians coming. So out there is the ship. Look what we've got over here. Sea lions, the Galapagos sea lion, an endemic species that occurs nowhere else in the world. It's really, really common here. And we've got one right here on this bench. So remember, this is the absolute middle of town. Oh, hello, he's having a little look round. He's having a bit of a scratch. So remember, this is right in the middle of town. So imagine living amongst all of this wildlife right in the city. It's just incredible, and it really is a model for conservation. So I'll hand back to Joe, and I look forward to telling you about the Darwin Leader projects.
All right, so a great little clip there. Let me bring Stuart back in. There you go, Stuart. I think that's a great example of how wildlife, I mean, Puerto Aora is not a small city, about 25,000 people, somewhere in between there. So it's not small.
That's right. I mean, it really is a model of how you can live side by side with wildlife. They have set up the Galapagos Islands and manage it so unbelievably well. I mean, truly, I can't think of anywhere on Earth that's comparable, with 97% of the land area fully conserved and set aside for nature. And again, as you saw in that video, even in that 3%, like the cities, like right here in Puerto Aora, there's the native and endemic wildlife all around. So it really is a brilliant example how if we just think carefully and care, and just make careful decisions, we can absolutely nurture wildlife and live with wildlife alongside human settlements and communities. So it's an awesome example of that.
Yes, absolutely. Well, Stuart, we have a few classrooms backstage with us. So while we have the pleasure of your company for a few more minutes, I'm going to see if there's a couple questions for you.
With pleasure.
And we'll see some students. So let me just pull up my list here, make sure I pick the right groups. So in Salem, Massachusetts, we have the Phoenix School hanging out with us. Let me bring them into the call. Hey, Phoenix
Hello.
School, how are we doing? All right, there they are. I'm wondering if, well, we have Stuart, if you guys have a quick question about the Galapagos, maybe some of the wildlife, and we can ask Stuart while we have him. There's lots of time for questions, but let's get a couple now. All right, here comes someone in red, looks like. Great.
My name is Levi, and I'm in 8th grade, and I was wondering, what's the most exotic endangered species you have seen on your trip to the Galapagos?
Well, that's a really, really good question. I mean, the truth is there are a lot of endangered species here. I think that probably the most endangered one, and also in some ways the most exotic, would be the little Galapagos penguins. Most people think of penguins as living in icy, cold places like Antarctica. But believe it or not, that's actually the minority of the species. Most of them live in temperate areas. And here in the Galapagos, there's even a tropical species called the Galapagos penguin. From memory, I think there's only about 4,000 of them left. They are quite, oh, Joe's got a photo. There we go. Yeah, they're actually quite endangered. They were brought up on the Humboldt Current, a really strong and powerful cold water current that sweeps up the west coast of South America. And they're thought to be related to some of the other penguin species, the jackass penguins that live along the coast of South America. But they reached here hundreds of thousands or millions of years ago and have evolved to this tropical environment. They're much smaller than the ones on mainland South America. And yeah, they're a totally unique species, but there are only about 4,000 or so. So they are pretty endangered and pretty threatened. Luckily, the wonderful conservationists here are doing a really good job. They occur mostly on the western islands of the Galapagos, and pretty much all of their breeding sites are permanently protected. So I think they've got a bright future, but it is an endangered species, and it does have to be monitored very carefully. So I hope that answers your question. So seeing exotic little penguins in the tropics, I think was a bit of a surprise when they came here.
All right, very cool. Let's grab another classroom here. This time we are going to go to Bristol in the US. We got some 5th graders hanging out with us. Let me bring them in front and center. Oops, they slipped off my screen. There we go. Hey, Southside School, how we doing? All right, let's grab that mic. If you got a question for us, we want it.
We do have one.
Great.
Is there any videos of like any exotic or like endangered but like unharmful creatures?
Yes, absolutely. Well, Joe, you should answer that, I suppose.
Yeah, so I mean, I have a whole bunch of videos queued up that I'm going to play today, but since we were just talking about the penguin and we want to talk about an exotic, not dangerous species, why don't I just play this video? We were snorkeling. I was with my family snorkeling in Sullivan Bay, right off of some lava flows, about 125 years old, these lava flows. And we had one of those beautiful Galapagos penguins come and join us for a swim. I don't think it could resist coming into the water with us. So let's take a little look at this video and we'll answer that question with a video. So if you look in the background, you can see the ship there. You can see the Oosterschelde. You can see the lava rock here from that flow. Again, about 125 years old. So relatively young if you think about the history of the Earth. And then here we go. The penguin hopped in with us for a little swim. And like many animals in the Galapagos, they aren't really afraid of humans. Didn't really have a lot of predators to worry about. So this penguin's happy to swim with us, have a nice scratch. As it's kind of looking around, you can see it looking down. Are there any little fish around? Is there anything interesting for us to, or for him or her to eat? So we had a nice little swim with this penguin. In fact, it's not in this clip, but when the penguin first jumped into the water, it almost jumped right on top of me with my GoPro. And it actually hit my GoPro. So you can hear a thunk because it landed almost right on top of the GoPro. It really didn't care that I was there. It just cannonballed in and headed up the water. So there is an example of a video of maybe a rare exotic species in the Galapagos.
And as Joe mentioned, because there's no land predators, no large land predators here, all of the animals have evolved here and lived here for millions of years, unafraid of other large animals on land. And this astounded Charles Darwin when he came here nearly 200 years ago, 185 or so years ago. The big animals on land, the giant tortoises, which we're going to show videos of, and the Darwin Leader projects of shortly. The marine iguanas, the birds, all of these amazing animals are absolutely unafraid. But they're wild animals. It's easy to forget. Like that sea lion I just showed you on the bench a few minutes ago. They are wild animals, so you have to respect them. It's not fair to go close to them. You have to stay 2 meters back. But yeah, as Joe said, they're not afraid of people. So you're able to see them in a way that you just can't in most other parts of the world. It's a very, very special place.
Yeah, it's a really good point. Is the park rules are 2 meters away. Sometimes you have to move because the animals will just come right through you like you're not there. So you actually have to move out of the way and be the one to kind of back away, which is kind of
That's
funny.
absolutely true. Yeah.
All right. So we'll grab another question here. I do want to give a shout out, though, to we have a school joining us in the UK, in Cumbria. And they're year 4, 5, and 6 students. Their camera's not connected, but if you can hear and see us okay, use the private chat. It looks like a speech bubble on the right, and you can send us in a question. While we wait to see if one comes in, let's go to Windsor, Ontario, here in Canada. We've got a grade 9 geography class with us. Let's see if they have a question for us. Hey, Windsor.
Hi there. I was just curious, were there any predators at all at one point or another on the Galapagos Islands?
So yeah, there are of course predators here. For example, the penguins, for example, predating fish and hunting fish. But the key point is there's no large predators on land. So the bird colonies, the tortoises, the marine iguanas live on land without fear. So in the water, yes, absolutely. There's even orcas that patrol the water, and they'll definitely take the sea lions and other big animals. But on land, there's no dogs, there's no cats, there's no large carnivores that there are on all the continents of the world. So that's the really significant point. So if you think about, Canada or US or any part of the world, there's always 1 or 2 or 3 large predatory species. That might be, in some cases, bears or felines, cats, the cat family or dog family. But here, there's none of those. On some of the islands, rats, cats, and mice have been accidentally introduced, and those have caused absolute chaos with the wildlife and severely impacted some of the populations. But on many of the islands, they've removed the rats, cats, and mice, and the wildlife is returning in really good numbers. So for that reason, because they had no reason to be afraid, the animals just don't see you as a threat. They just see you as an object, like a wall or a house. So the animals just simply aren't afraid of humans. And again, that's a point that amazed Darwin. It was a bit unfortunate because in the 18th and 19th centuries, all of the sailors that called in here would really hunt the animals. Remember, back then on people on ships, they'd have really terrible food. Ship's biscuit and basically all the food that they carried would have to last, in some cases, years. So it wouldn't be particularly nice or fresh. So when they got to islands like the Galapagos, sadly, in the 18th and 19th centuries, they absolutely decimated the wildlife by hunting because the animals literally weren't afraid. You could walk right up to them and catch them. And Darwin himself landed on Floriana Island here in the Galapagos and noted that exact thing happening, the tortoises being killed by the sailors. And he predicted that species, the Floriana tortoise, would become extinct. And sadly, that came true within a couple of decades of his visit. Luckily, some hybrid Floriana tortoises were found, and they've been reintroduced today. But and now, of course, there's no hunting here on land. There's still fishermen in the waters, but absolutely no hunting on land of the native species. And the ecosystems are doing really well. They're recovering, and those animals are bounding back in great numbers to how the islands once were.
All right. And Stuart, I believe the largest non-introduced predator is the Galapagos hawk.
Right.
Which you can find on a lot of the islands.
Way by.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great question, Windsor. All right.
Yeah.
Well, Stuart, thank you so much for being with us today. I know you have a big day ahead of you. Of course,
Absolute pleasure.
Darwin Leaders, the best of luck. Finishing up.
Thank
I
you.
know they're probably frantically editing right now.
They are.
Guys. And yeah, it's gonna be a big night for them to get to showcase what they've learned, and of course to have dignitaries from the Galapagos to see what we've been up to.
Absolutely. So next week we'll show you some of those films, the giant tortoise projects, the marine iguana projects, the beetles, the tomatoes. We'll have lots of those films completed for next week. So we really hope you join us next week and actually see each of the research teams and what they've been up to.
All right. Awesome. Well, Stuart, have a great rest of the day. Say hi to everybody on the ship. And
Thank you.
Luck tonight. Have fun.
Thanks.
All right.
Bye, everyone.
Okay. Well, let's continue on with our program for today. As I mentioned, we had 8 live events while I was in the Galapagos last week. And we're going to do a couple highlights from those live events before we do our Cahoot quiz. So we had 8 live events. 2 of them were in Spanish, which was really, really important because we wanted to make sure that we included the local community. Oftentimes, tourists and other science groups will visit the Galapagos and kind of do what they need to do, right? Visit, explore, collect scientific data, but not really visit in the community. So we wanted to make sure that during our 3 weeks in the Galapagos that we did take that time and visit the community. So we had over 200 students from the community visit the ship. So sometimes they'd come for day visits and we would have activities and experiments for them to do on the ship, meet some of the crew. Other times we'd have groups of students come on board with us and sail between islands, which was a really fun experience. And to see the students working the ship, the sails and such was really cool as well. I think they had a lot of fun. And then we had those 2 Spanish events, which we broadcast out to the islands. So classrooms who maybe couldn't come and visit the ship could at least experience it and of course hear it in Spanish. We did 2 visits to the public docks. So as Stu showed us with the mangroves, the public docks are very, very busy. Water taxis coming in and out, people going to ships to spend time going around the islands. But even the public docks were full of life. There were sea lions laying on the benches and laying in the middle of the dock. There were baby marine iguanas and Sally Lightfoot crabs hanging out in the sun, pelicans and frigate birds and blue-footed boobies landing on the dock and flying around looking for fish. And then at night, there's lights on the dock. And so if you came down at night, you could see baby blacktip reef sharks would swim in those lights under the dock. So you could see some of those reef sharks. It was really cool to see them there. Now I want to share a few highlights from some of the events that we did during the week where we had the satellite unit out in the field. And so I'm going to bring up the first video here. And this was an event we did from Tortuga Bay. So Tortuga Bay is about a 2-kilometer walk from Puerto Aora. It's a beautiful white sandy beach, powder white sand with a little lagoon. And in that lagoon, you can find baby hammerheads, baby blacktip reef sharks, sea turtles, marine iguanas around the edges. So let's take a little look from a little clip from that event we did from Tortuga Bay. So you can see here, we have a couple baby blacktip reef sharks. So really good timing here as we started the event, they disappeared. So we were wondering if we'd see them again. But sure enough, we were patient. And after a few minutes, we had a few start to swim through. So this is a little group. This is 2 little baby blacktip reef sharks. And these lagoons here are very calm and they're great shelter for them as they grow larger. This is a little walk through a little forest of prickly pear cactus. We're going to talk a little bit more about the prickly pear cactus when we talk about evolution. We had Sarah Darwin join us for an event, and we'll talk a little bit more about what makes these ones really unique. But these older ones, you can see they've turned into more like the trunk of a tree, while these younger ones still have this protective layer of spikes kind of running up and down. Now, from the baby marine iguanas that we saw on the dock, we get to the full-size ones we saw here on the beach. So this is still very early in the morning. These marine iguanas are barely starting to move around as they warm up in the sun. They're the only marine lizards. So they go into the ocean and they find the green stuff that they like to eat there, but then they do have to spend a lot of time warming up. And you can see we wrapped up the event here at this little tide pool. You can see the Starlink, the battery, and the satellite dish that allowed us to connect. And then we got buzzed right at the end here by these 2 lava herrings flying by. Very cool. So that was Tortuga Bay. It was great to be able to broadcast live from there and bring it into classrooms. The following day, or actually 2 days later, we visited the giant tortoises in the highlands of Santa Cruz. And so we had a pretty good connection there, and we can talk a little bit about what we're seeing here. So at night, they crawl into this mud because the temperature drops a little bit, but if they get into the mud, it helps them stay warm. So most of the tortoises in the early morning are just starting to come out of this mud here and then warm up in the sun. So that mud's really important. It keeps them warm at night, and then they kind of wallow a little bit. You can see a couple larger ones here hanging out in the mud. And then the tortoises, the younger they are, the more ridges they have in their shells, the more lines in each of the individual scutes that they have in their shells. Then the older they become, the more smooth their shells are. So that's a good indication. And this guy here is the oldest one at this ranch we visited. So this turtle here, they figure, is probably close to 200 years old. So it is very possible that this tortoise, now Darwin never visited Santa Cruz, but it's very possible that this tortoise was alive when Charles Darwin was visiting the Galapagos in the 1800s. So that is pretty darn cool. And then we had some special guests here, Finn and Nora. This is my son and my daughter, and we used them to kind of show the size of the tortoise. So this is a 6th grader and a 2nd grader, and you can see how they compare to the size of this giant tortoise. And this guy was probably about 200 years old. Pretty cool. Now on each island, I believe there were originally 15 species of the tortoise spread across the islands. 3 species have been lost. And as Stuart mentioned, when people would visit the island in the 1800s, they would take tortoises on board because they could live on the ship for months and months and months without food and water, and they'd be a source of fresh meat on board the ship. And so this is a really good example. You can see those ridges, those lines in the scutes of the shell. The older the tortoise becomes, the more smoother its shell gets. So there's one more place that I want to show you before we do our Kahoot quiz. In the middle of the week, we hopped on board the ship, the Usterskalde, and we sailed to a little island called Bartolome. And there's a very beautiful spot there called Pinnacle Rock and Sullivan Bay. And we went there to see the wildlife, but we also went there to film some footage of the Usterskalde, the ship, as it sailed in this iconic spot in the Galapagos. It's probably the most photographed place in the Galapagos. So I'm going to share a few pictures, share a few videos to kind of tell you the story of our visit there. So let me share my screen and let me see if I can pick the right pictures. That would be really important too. There they are. Okay. So this is what the place looks like. So this should give you a little idea of how special it is. So this is, you can see the ship there. This is Pinnacle Rock. It's kind of like the remaining part of a wall of a volcanic cone from the past. There's this beautiful climb you can take, and you get this beautiful view over the Pinnacle Rock and over this bay. And actually, the cameraman did it first thing in the morning to get some footage as the ship sailed in between these 2 spots. So this is the island. This is Bartolome. And then this is part of Santiago, and it's called Sullivan Bay, this part here. You can see that the lava flow here on Sullivan Bay was covered in these bright red Sally Lightfoot crabs. We learned that if the Sally Lightfoot crabs are dark in color, that means they're young, and so they need to blend in. But as they get older, their shells become harder, and it's harder for predators to feed on them. So they get this bright red color because they're not as worried about the predators anymore. Here's another picture here of the ship sailing in between the two islands. And this lava flow here is only 125 years old, this lava flow. So if you think about it, our planet is probably is over 4 billion years old. So in geological history, this new lava, this new land is quite young, only being 125 years old. And a few pictures here as you walk around on this landscape, it is so barren. It's almost like you're walking on the moon when you're walking on this lava flow here. You can see some amazing patterns as you look really close, and the way that it kind of cooled and solidified, forming these kind of accordion shapes here in the flow. So very interesting to walk across it and see that. And then here's a picture in a distance. This is how we got to shore in a little Zodiac. So this is a picture from the ship, and you can see we've got our naturalist guide there with us, and then my kids there and my wife there as well. And so you can just kind of get a picture of how big this landscape is that we were exploring. And I do want to share these pictures because at the end of the day, when we returned to Baltra and Santa Cruz, as we were leaving the ship in a little Zodiac, I managed to capture these beautiful sunset photos as we left the ship. So just the right time to catch this light and a really beautiful view of the Oosterschelde as we headed back to shore for the night. So there's one more little shot there. When we visited Sullivan Bay, we did some snorkeling, and we saw the penguin, which you saw that video earlier, but we also saw some other amazing wildlife. So let me share a couple little clips with you, and then we'll do our Kahoot quiz. So we saw sea turtles. This is a green sea turtle. Some of you who joined us last week will know that there's only one species of sea turtle that frequents the waters of the Galapagos, and that is the green sea turtle. So there are 7 species of sea turtles around the world, and this is the only one that visits the Galapagos, lays its eggs on the beaches as well. So the green sea turtle, they get that name not because they're green, but because of what they eat, seagrass and algae off the rocks. And if we could look inside this sea turtle, its fat would have kind of a green tone to it because of all the green stuff that it does eat. And again, this sea turtles all have different personalities. Some swim away really fast when people are around, and some, like this one, didn't really care that I was there and filming with my camera. It was just happy to go about its business. Here you can see it eating a little bit of algae off the rock here, kind of spitting out some of the extra little sand or stones that it got with each mouthful. So that's the green sea turtle, the only sea turtles that you will find in the Galapagos. We also got to spend some time with those Galapagos sea lions. The young ones are so much fun. They love to play. They love to do somersaults with you. They love to blow bubbles. And here is a mother, and its baby. You can see they're playing. They're nipping at each other. The Galapagos sea lions are their own species, only found in the Galapagos, and they are also the smallest species of sea lion in the world. So only in the Galapagos, they're the smallest species in the Galapagos. You can see the baby is very playful. It's trying to play with me. It's trying to get its mother to play. You can hear it making little sounds in the water. Just a great time to be in the water with these beautiful Galapagos sea lions. In fact, pretty much for the entire time that I was snorkeling, I had the baby sea lion pretty close. So I'd be trying to film a sea turtle or something, and the baby sea lion would pop in and interrupt the shot because it was just so playful, so curious. It wanted to be part of the action. All right. So I think I'm going to show you one more little clip. This clip is from a different place we visited. This clip is from San Cristobal. So San Cristobal is the second oldest island in the Galapagos. It's on the eastern side of the archipelago, the group of islands. And there's a beautiful spot there called Kicker Rock. which is very famous spot to go snorkeling, to go scuba diving. And so when I did go snorkeling there, I was lucky to have a few encounters. So this first one here is an eagle ray, a spotted eagle ray. And then I was very lucky because a shoal of hammerhead sharks came through. And they were just in and out in just a few seconds. It was such a brief moment, but I felt really lucky to be able to see this. All right, so I really hope that gives you a taste of the amazing time that we had in the Galapagos. It was, and still is, an amazing experience. Our young Darwin leaders are having a blast meeting the conservationists and exploring the Galapagos. And so now I think it's time that we do our Kahoot quiz together. I think we've gotten to that time. So I am going to load the Kahoot quiz on my end. Just bear with me for a second while it pops up. And then we're going to work through that Kahoot quiz together, and we're going to see which classroom comes out on top. So it is Kahoot.it. That is where you want to visit. I'm going to put the PIN number up on the screen right now. Here it comes. If you want to go to Kahoot.it, you want to put in the number. The number is 779. So while we wait for a few players to come and join us, a few classrooms, maybe a few individual students, I will just kind of run through a little bit of how you can join. If you have a laptop or a Chromebook or a tablet at your desk, of course, you can join that way. If not, your teacher could pop this up at the front of the room. You could shout out your answers to him or her. If you're at home, we always have homeschool students joining us. You can scan that QR code with your phone or tablet, and it will bring you into the Kahoot quiz as well. I have 4 questions for us today. If you are paying attention, you will be ready to go. The quicker you put in the right answer, the more points you're going to get. And then to our classrooms who are with us in camera spots or joining us via YouTube, send in questions in the chat sidebar. You can put questions in the private chat if you're in a camera spot. I'll come to your classrooms as well, and we'll do some questions as we wrap up today's event as well. So just a few more moments to get some more groups in here with us and ready for the Kahoot. And then we'll wrap up with our experiment. We have to take a look at our experiment from 2 weeks ago. And then I have a brand new experiment, very easy experiment that I hope every classroom can try this week. Gonna give maybe 20 more seconds and then we'll get our Kahoot going. We're making good time today. We still have lots of time before the end of our event. And just a reminder, over the next coming weeks, we will be sailing on the ship towards Rapa Nui, or Easter Island as some may know it. So we'll do some live events from the ship. We'll have some special guests. And then when we get to Rapa Nui, we should be able to do some really special events from the island, which should be a lot of fun. So we hope you follow along as we make our way to Rapa Nui. Okay, things look like they've slowed down a little bit. So I'm going to get this quiz off the ground. Okay, here we go. We're going to count in with a 3-second timer, and then we will be live with our first question. So, a little multiple choice for you. The oldest tortoise at the ranch we visited was about how many years old? Was it 50 years old, 100 years old, 150, or about 200 years old? So you got 3 or 4 options there for you: 50, 100, 150, or 200 years old. So how old was that oldest tortoise at the ranch? We've got a few more seconds to get those answers in, and then we'll see what happens. Okay, good job, crew. The best estimate that the naturalist had for that tortoise is about 200 years old. That tortoise has been around. It has seen some things, and you can tell the difference too between a younger tortoise and an older tortoise. A younger tortoise, if you go near it, it pulls into its shell and makes kind of a hissing sound when the air comes out. Whereas the older tortoises, you can walk past them and they kind of just keep doing what they're doing. People have been around them so much that they kind of just shrug and keep doing their thing. So let's look at our board. The eager hamster is holding down that top spot. We now move to a true and false question. Galapagos sea lions are the largest of the sea lion species. Is that true or is that false? The Galapagos sea lion is the largest of the sea lion species. True or false? Got a few more seconds to get your answer locked in. Okay, absolutely false. Good job, crew. They are their own species. They're endemic, of course, to the Galapagos, and they are the smallest. But in my opinion, they're the most fun. I've visited the Galapagos 3 times, and each time has involved long, long sessions of playing and swimming with those Galapagos sea lions. Eager hamster does not want to let go of that spot, so we have to go to another question. Oops, there we go. We have another quiz question coming your way. The only species of sea turtle found in the Galapagos is it the hawksbill, the green, the leatherback, or the loggerhead sea turtle? The hawksbill, the green, the leatherback, or the loggerhead, which is the only species found in the Galapagos. Oftentimes on the beach, you can see the marks where they drag themselves, the females, up onto the shore, and they laid their eggs, usually up to about 100 eggs in each go. And sometimes they'll come on the beach 6 or 7 times during breeding season and lay those eggs. Oh, good job, crew. It is absolutely the green sea turtle. We know our leatherback sea turtle is the largest in the world. We know the loggerhead has those big chunky heads. The hawksbill has those kind of spiky serrated edges on the back of their shell. But the green sea turtle is the one that we find in the Galapagos. One more question to go. It's a true and false. Here we go. Natural selection acts on populations, not a whole species. So what do you think? Natural selection, does it act on a small group or the whole species? Natural selection. True or false? It acts on a population, so a small group, and not the whole species. All right, that is true. It acts on a smaller group and not the whole species. And I'm just realizing now that this question was a bit of a surprise one for you, because I have a little clip from Sarah Darwin that I haven't played yet. So I'm going to play that clip at the very end of today's event, because Sarah was so good to join us on a few of our live events with classrooms. She's a botanist, she's an author, she's one of our ambassadors of the DARWIN200, and she's also Charles Darwin's great-great-granddaughter. So it was great to have that connection with us in the Galapagos. But I will play that little clip from her at the very, very end. Here we go. Let's look at our podium. In third place, we have the Agent Condor. In second place, we've got the Brave Bison. And in first place, holding down that top spot, the Noble Lemming. So we had a little change in things right at the very end. If you are in the classroom, if that's your classroom, the Noble Lemming, I need you to send me an email, classroom@darwin200.com. We've got a little prize for you. There's the email, classroom@darwin200.com. Noble Lemming, if that's your classroom, send us a message. A huge shout out to everybody who played Kahoot with us today, and to those who conquered that last question, the curveball I tossed at you right at the end, to see what we thought. Very, very cool. I'm going to come back from the screen share, and we need to talk about our experiments. So let me make this music stop here in the background. and let's get to our experiments. So 2 weeks ago, we had a really cool experiment about diffusion. So how material spreads through the water. And we had 2 examples, a cold and a warm. So let's take a little look here and let's see how the results went for that experiment. So let me share my video file. It should come up right now. And here it comes.
Welcome back, everyone. 2 weeks ago, we undertook an experiment to explore the processes behind diffusion and why in the beaker of cold water, the potassium permanganate crystals formed a blue solution only very slowly that stayed at the bottom of the beaker, whereas in the hot water, the potassium permanganate spread out quickly and turned the whole beaker purple. Could you work out the answer why the 2 beakers had different rates of diffusion? All fluids and gases are subject to Brownian motion. This is the process of the atoms or molecules that make up fluids or gases moving around randomly and continuously. This causes high concentrations to spread out into low concentrations, causing a solution to equalize. In hot water, the particles have more kinetic energy. They're moving around more quickly, causing the spread of the solution to happen much more rapidly. In cold water, there's less kinetic energy, so the spread of the solution takes place much more slowly. This is the main reason why we see the difference between the 2 beakers in this experiment. Did you guess correctly and identify Brownian motion and kinetic energy as the reasons behind this difference? Let's find out now.
All right. Very, very cool. So that diffusion experiment is an easy one to replicate in your classroom. You really just need a beaker or a jar or a cup of warm water and cold water. Then something like food dye, food coloring is pretty accessible. You will see the difference between the warm and the cold water. Remember, those molecules, when you heat something up, they start to vibrate and bump against each other. Whereas in the colder water, they're moving more slowly. They're colliding more slowly. So when we put the color into the fast-moving, vibrating, warm water, it moved it through the beaker much, much faster than the cold one, where the molecules are moving much more slowly, colliding with each other at a much, much slower rate. So we have an experiment for this week, and I picked a really, really easy experiment that anybody should be able to do at home or in the classroom. You really only need 3 bowls and some water. And I chose this experiment for 2 reasons. One is it fools your brain. So it's kind of a fun experiment where you trick your body. We can't always fool our brain. We can't always fool our body, but this is one experiment where we can. And then this experiment as well has to do a little bit with evolution, a little bit with an evolutionary response that our body does have. So I want to show you this experiment. It is so, so easy to do. And let me share my camera here. I've got a second camera loaded up, and I'm going to switch over to it now. And then we are going to, there we go. You should still hear me. All you need is 3 bowls. So here we go. I've got 2 bowls. Oh, there we go. And then a third one, a little bit bigger, that's going to go in the middle. So 1, 2, 3 bowls. In the bowls, you're going to put 3 different kinds of water. In one bowl, you're going to put hot water. Now, don't make it so hot you burn your hand, but make it nice and warm so that you can feel that it's pretty warm. You might want some supervision for this. Maybe your teacher, maybe a guardian at home can help you with the warm water. So not so warm that you're going to burn your hand, but warm enough that you can tell you're putting your hand in really nice warm water. In the other one on the end, you're going to put cold water, as cold as you can get it. Maybe you can get it really cold from the tap. Maybe you're going to want to add a little bit of ice to it. So warm water on one side, really cold water on the other, and you're going to put your hands, both your hands, one into the warm, one into the cold. And you're going to keep your hands there for 30 seconds. So hands in the water, 30 seconds, and wait. Count down those 30 seconds. A little bit longer wouldn't hurt, but at least 30 seconds. Then you're going to take your hands out and put them into the middle bowl. In the middle bowl, you're going to have regular water, room temperature water. So just what you'd normally get from your tap, or you can have the water sit maybe for part of the day. So it just gets to the same temperature as your room. Hot water in one, cold in the other. Keep your hands in each for 30 seconds and then put them both into the middle bowl, the room temperature bowl, and see what you feel. I'm going to tell you right now, it is going to feel really strange. One hand will feel very different from the other hand, and it might surprise you a little bit at first. So, warm water and cold water, one in each bowl. Keep your hands in for 30 seconds, then put them both into the the room temperature bowl in the middle. You could experiment different ways and do it separately. So keep one hand in the warm, then put it into the room temperature bowl, or keep one in the cold, then put it in. But do try it with both hands, because it is going to be quite a strange feeling when you put your hands in. So a very easy experiment for this week. 3 bowls, some water, hot water in one, really cold water in the other, and room temperature in the middle. So let's switch my camera views back here. We'll take this one away. You have 2 weeks to try that experiment at home or in the classroom. Send in pictures trying that experiment to DARWIN200.com. And then I want you to try and tell us what you think happened, why your hands felt the way you did when you took the cold water hand and put it in the room temperature hand, when you took the hot water hand and put it in the room temperature bowl. I want you to try to explain why you think your hands felt the way they did. I know I'm sounding a little bit funny, but I don't want to ruin the results of the experiment. I want you to feel and be surprised at how you can fool your brain with this very, very simple experiment. Okay. Well, we do still have a few classrooms hanging out with us. So if you do want to send a message into the chat with a question, feel free. I'm going to check in with our group in Massachusetts and see if they have a last-minute question or two for us about the Galapagos. And then we're going to end off today's event with our curiosity of the week. So here we go. I see someone coming up.
It's hard. All right, there you go.
Hi, my name's Alden. I'm in 3rd grade. My question is, what was your favorite animal or thing that you learned in the Galapagos Islands?
Oh man, picking a favorite animal is really, really hard because it is so much fun. But I'm a scuba diver. I've been scuba diving since 2007. So I love being underwater. So the marine life was my favorite, the animals in the water. And I haven't been diving with hammerhead sharks for a long time. I was in the Bahamas years ago, and I was diving with some great hammerhead sharks. They were about 10, 12 feet long. But these hammerheads here in the Galapagos around Kicker Rock, they are scalloped hammerheads, so they're a different species. So that was by far my favorite, to be able to be in the water. And I'd say there was about 10, 11, 12 of them in that group, that shoal of hammerheads. So by far, those are my favorite. That was my favorite encounter in the Galapagos. It was short, but it was really cool to get to see them. All right, who's up? I think I see some more hands. We'll get another 1 or 2 more questions, and we'll do our curiosity.
Really?
Speak loudly and clearly.
What was the coolest animal you see?
Well, I'm going to go with a land one this time. And maybe it's not the most popular one, and you can find them in other places in the world, but I love owls. You don't get to see owls a lot. There's 2 species in the Galapagos. There's I believe it's the short-eared owl, and it's the barn owl are the 2 species that you can find in the Galapagos. So when we were exploring a lava tube, which is basically an old tunnel where lava flowed underground, and then it creates this crazy cave that you can walk through. When we got to the other end of the lava tube, there was a little shed, and in that shed was a barn owl sitting in kind of the dark corner of the shed waiting for night, because they're nocturnal. They hunt at night. So even though you can find barn owls in other places in the world, I love to see owls in the wild because they're so hard to see. They only come out at night. It's dark. So when you get to see an owl, it's pretty special. So to see one of the 2 species of owls in the Galapagos was pretty cool. All right, let's grab one more before we do our curiosity.
I don't know what it is. Sure. Liza, come on up.
Remy. Sit up, Remy. What?
My name's Liza, and I'm in 5th grade, and I want to know what the temperature difference is like in Canada versus in the Galapagos.
Good question. So the Galapagos Islands are right on the equator. So it's pretty consistent there. It's pretty warm all year long. The sun rises at 6, sets at 6 at night. When you're at that part of the world, things are pretty consistent. I would say during the day, it was pretty hot. You would just moving around, you'd get pretty sweaty. I'd say it was 30 degrees Celsius or warmer most days in the Galapagos. Now that I'm back in Canada, it's springtime here. So the temperature is more like 18 degrees Celsius right now. So it's about a 12 degrees Celsius difference. I know you guys use Fahrenheit in the US, so you'll have to convert that maybe with an app. But right now in Canada, it's about 18 degrees Celsius, whereas in the Galapagos, it was 30 degrees Celsius or even warmer on a lot of days. So probably about a 12 to 15 degree difference. But as summer warms up here, just like it will for you in Massachusetts, we'll catch up to the Galapagos. We'll warm up and have temperatures a lot closer to what they're having right now. All right. So I am going to switch over to curiosity. Thank you, Phoenix School, for those great questions. But we have a curiosity to tackle. So last week's curiosity, I'm going to play the answer for you now. Let's see how well people did with their guesses.
Welcome back, everyone. Last week, I asked you to try and guess the species of bird that these feathers belong to. We had lots of answers come in over the last week, and many of you got the right answer. They're actually from a greater flamingo, but everyone that said flamingo got it absolutely right. Now let's find out who won this week's prize.
All right. So flamingo, that was a feather from a flamingo. Believe it or not, there are flamingos in the Galapagos. It surprised me the first time. The first time I visited, I was walking on the beach and a flamingo flew over top of me, which was very surprising. But I learned that there is a small population in the Galapagos. And so you'll find them in kind of little flat areas where the water's kind of a little bit brackish, so a little bit salty, and they like to filter feed little brine shrimp and things like that from the water. So believe it or not, you can actually find some flamingos in the Galapagos, which was really cool. So we have one more video. It is our curiosity for this week. So let's take a look at the video.
Back, everyone. This week's curiosity is this strange little object here. Obviously it's a fossil, but do you know what type of fossil it is? Or what the name is of this organism? Or when it existed? Send in your answers to classroom@darwin200.com. Join me in 1 week's time to find out the answer. Thanks for taking part and good luck.
Okay, so there's your challenge. That is your curiosity of the week. Can you identify what that fossil species is? So classroom@darwin200.com. You have 1 week to send in your answer. Whereas for our experiment, you have 2 weeks to send us in some pictures and how you think you trick your body with those different temperatures of water, how you fool your brain. Well, we are going to wrap up with a huge shout out to our sponsors, to our supporters, without whom we could not be sailing around the world right now, training young leaders, doing research, and also doing the world's most exciting classroom, broadcasting the classrooms from around the world every week. So I'm going to share a little video to celebrate and thank our sponsors and our supporters. And right after that, before I turn off the event, I'm going to share the little clip from the Charles Darwin Research Station where Sarah Darwin talks a little bit about natural selection. And then Rakan, who is the executive director of the research station, will talk to us about some of the marine projects. So it's about a 2-minute video after our supporter video, and the event will come to a close from there. So thank you to all of our classrooms who joined us today from across Canada, the US, and other places in the world. We can't wait to see you again next week as we sail towards Rapa Nui.
So I'd like to distill down into basically four things, three crucial things for evolution by natural selection. And we have to remember here that evolution takes place on populations, not on species and not on individuals. And I'll explain to you why. So Darwin was taught before he went on the voyage of the Beagle to look at variation within a species. So if you look at humans, we all look slightly different. Some are taller, some have blue eyes, some have dark hair. We all have differences. We're all the same species, but we have differences, and that's variation. That's what Darwin was seeing in so many different things here. And we have inheritance. Darwin at the time didn't know what DNA was. We all now know that there's this chemical that we inherit from our biological parents, and these variations, these little differences that we've got, we inherit. And then finally, there's a struggle for existence in the wild. If you have an oak tree, it might have thousands of acorns every year, but not all of those little acorns are going to germinate, and maybe only one or two will actually form a big tree. And this is the struggle for survival. And once you have these three different forces at play, it forms natural selection in wild populations.
Perhaps the most ambitious currently is the Deep Sea program. This is a multi-institutional program to map and research seamounts in the Galapagos Marine Reserve. Last year, that led to the discovery of a deep sea coral reef that whose existence was unknown in Galapagos. So that's a major line of research. We also work with many of the emblematic species, marine species of Galapagos. So you mentioned hammerheads, for example. We do a lot of tagging and tracking of these animals in and outside of the marine reserve to understand their movement, their behavior. We monitor other species with very small populations, such as flightless cormorant and penguins, making sure that those populations are stable, alerting authorities if you do have an issue, such as what we had with avian flu earlier on in the year. So we have a number of different research projects in the